A low, broad animal ponderously moves through the undergrowth. A harsh cry makes the creature turn with surprising speed. This is a dangerous place, the habitat of one of the largest carnivores to walk the planet. But even those predators fear this lumbering creature. Though a herbivore, its defenses and weaponry are unmatched. Welcome to this dinosaur profile on Ankylosaurus, a heavily armed and armoured tank of a dinosaur. It is one of the most famous ankylosaurs, but relatively little is known about it. In 1900, a paleontologist called Barnum Brown, named after P.T. Barnum, was excavating a fossil site in the Lands Formation of Wyoming for the American Museum of Natural History. He was unearthing a partial skeleton of a carnivorous dinosaur and found 77 osteoderms, small lumps of bone used by reptiles for protection. This carnivore was eventually identified as the first partial skeleton of Tyrannosaurus rex in 1905, but the osteoderms remained a mystery. In 1906, Brown was leading an expedition to the Hell Creek Formation near Gilbert Creek in Montana. A fossil collector called Peter Kaizen reported finding some bones, and the team went to excavate. Brown soon realized that he had come across some kind of thyreophorian dinosaur. The fossil consisted of the upper part of the skull, 2 teeth, part of the shoulder, several vertebrae, ribs, and over 30 of those strange osteoderms. Brown had finally found the origin of those strange bones he had found 6 years before. In an attempt to reconstruct the creature, Brown looked to one of the best-known thyreophorians of similar size, Stegosaurus. This produced an animal with a high back, short front legs, and no tail club, not having found one yet. He called his find Ankylosaurus magniventris. Ankylo, meaning bent or crooked in Greek, was taken from ankylosis, a medical term for when bones fuse at a joint and become stiff. Joined to the Greek saurus, meaning lizard, this name means fused or stiff lizard, a reference to the fused bones of the skull. The magniventris is from Latin, meaning great belly, referring to its wide ribs. It was criticised by the paleontologist Samuel Wendell Wilson, one of the pair who found the first Diplodocus, claiming that it was based on too few remains, and that it was the same as Stegopelta, a more complete ankylosaur that he had found. Despite this, Brown's iconic drawing would still be used up to the 1980s. In 1910, Brown uncovered another ankylosaurus near Red Deer River in Alberta. It had ribs, vertebrae, leg bones, a complete skull, and the only Ankylosaurus tail club. In 1923, Henry Fairfield Osborn created the Ankylosaur group, named after Brown's dinosaur. This effectively moved Ankylosaurus out of the Stegosaur group that it had been wedged into, and allowed it to take on its own position in the Thyreophorans. The third Ankylosaurus specimen would be found nearby in 1947 by a pair of fossil collectors. It was a badly damaged skull and jaw, but larger than the other two found. Finally, in the 1960s, a section of vertebra was found in Powder River in Montana. These 4 specimens and a collection of various osteoderms and teeth are the only fossils we have of Ankylosaurus. Ankylosaurus was popularized by appearing in Rudolf Zallinger's The Age of Reptiles mural in 1947, and a life-size reconstruction at the 1964 New York City's World's Fair. Since then, many depictions of Ankylosaurus have shown it with spikes along its sides. Although this is a feature of Nodosaurids, a type of ankylosaur with no tail clubs, it still persists, a recent example being Jurassic World. There has been a lot of argument and debate over the years based on the fragmentary specimens found. Most information has been extrapolated from the more complete and numerous close relatives, Anodontosaurus and Euoplocephalus. As a complete Ankylosaurus has never been found, there have been various size estimates, mainly based on the second specimen found, the smallest, and the third, which was the largest. The most recent work in 2017 looked at the skull sizes and body proportions of close relatives to produce size ranges. After comparing vertebrae and other bones in these ranges, they concluded that the smallest Ankylosaurus found was between 6 and 7 meters long. This would make it larger than most ankylosaurs. The largest was about 8 meters long, making it one of, if not the largest ankylosaur. The most distinctive feature of Ankylosaurus is its head, particularly the 4 pyramid-shaped projections at the back of the skull, often referred to as horns. 2 pointed back and up, while the other 2 pointed back and down. The scale-like patterning on the top of the skull come from parts of the skull fusing together and remodeling, in a similar way bones do after a break. Most dinosaurs had large holes in their skull. In fact, tetrapods are normally defined by these gaps. But Ankylosaurus had none. They had been closed to create a solid, strong head. The nostrils seem to have pointed down and outward, and led to a large cavity in the skull. It is this cavity that created the high snout. The purpose of this area has led to a lot of debate. It is known from the very well developed olfactory areas of Ankylosaurids that they had a very good sense of smell. In fact, the chambers were separated, enabling slight differences in smell from each nostril to be sensed. Some think that Ankylosaurus may have possessed stereoolfaction, being able to tell which direction a smell came from. While it has been proposed that the cavity helped in smelling, the olfactory detection areas seem to have been away from where most of the air would have flowed. Another idea is that this cavity could have acted as a resonating chamber for a low rumble. This type of sound is the sort of thing that Ankylosaurus's ears, you can see the canals here in pink, were well suited to pick up. And the loops mirror those in the nose of sager antelope and the throats of cranes and swans. It has been disputed as all modern tetrapods, all land vertebrates, use their trachea for producing sound. However, ornithischians such as Parasaurolophus have evidence of using resonating systems in their skulls, so this theory is not without merit. The dominant theory at the moment is that it was used as a cooling system. Research on close relative Europlocephalus revealed that the loops and internal structure of the chambers were riddled with blood vessels. By expanding and contracting these vessels, Ankylosaurus would have been able to balance its body temperature and hydration. These sorts of mechanisms exist in the airways of modern large mammals living in warm climates. But, as I have said before, there can be more than one reason. Ankylosaurus' jaws were tipped with a blunt beak and contained about 140 small, leaf-shaped teeth. The shape of the teeth is so distinctive that the genus can be identified from just one tooth. When a similar tooth was discovered, the paleontologists who found it thought it might come from a new Ankylosaurus species, but decided to err on the side of caution and classify it as A. magniventris. The teeth and jaw were not suited to hard materials such as woody plants, so Ankylosaurus probably fed on ferns and shrubs. Evidence of teeth wear and the jaws of close relatives suggests that Ankylosaurus may have been able to slide its jaw back and forth, at least as juveniles. If this is true, these will be the only archosaurs, let alone dinosaurs, that could chew. Despite this, most food was probably still swallowed and left to ferment. The large hind gut region probably did most of this, like modern large herbivorous lizards with an enlarged colon. The body of Ankylosaurus was low, so it would have been able to browse from low plants. But if it was warm-blooded, it would need to eat about 60 kilograms of ferns a day, about the same amount of food as an elephant eats. Ankylosaurus had a few tricks on that count, however. Swallowing rather than spending time chewing means less time has to be spent on foraging. The beak and the hoof-like front feet could have been used to dig up nutritious buried food like tubers. The Cretaceous had seen the emergence of flowering plants and their fruit. Ankylosaurus's teeth seem well adapted for eating this highly nutritious food source. The teeth also suggest that it may have supplemented its diet by eating grubs and other invertebrates. The most wear appears on small, juvenile teeth, indicating that young ankylosaurs ate slightly differently to the adults. There are indications that the young also travelled in groups while the adults were solitary. Ankylosaurus's legs were interesting. The hind legs stayed the same size relative to the body as the animal grew. The front legs, however, grew thicker and stronger and supported the majority of its weight. The data strongly points to Ankylosaurus being mediportal, being slow-moving but capable of quick movements when in danger. But these quick movements were far from Ankylosaurus's main defense, and now we get into it. Ankylosaurus's armor. Ankylosaurus was not covered head to toe in bony plates. That would have been restrictive, unbelievably heavy, and not as protective as it might appear. They were primarily protected by large osteoderms, also called scutes, and ossicles, small bones embedded in the skin. There were some bony plates though. Ankylosaurs are split into the nodosaurids and the ankylosaurids. Nodosaurids have two bony bands over the neck and one over the hips. Ankylosaurids had two bands over the neck, but none over the hips. The osteoderms themselves were rounded and normally had a ridge down the middle called a keel. This helped deflect claws and teeth, lowering the power of a strike. In nodosaurids, the keels got so tall that they basically became spikes. Ankylosaurus had unusually low keels, even for ankylosaurids. Most developed ankylosaurids, like Euoplocephalus, had a cushion of collagen fibers underneath their thin osteoderms, but Ankylosaurus had the most. The bone would stop a point from penetrating, while the collagen would absorb the force, making the Ankylosaurus's armour both strong and lightweight. The cervical half rings that covered the neck have not been found complete, so there are numerous ideas about how they were arranged. No Ankylosaurus has been found articulated, so no one is sure about how the armour was positioned. It is mainly compared to those more complete relatives, Anodontosaurus and Euoplocephalus. Ankylosaurus seem to be most heavily protected at the head, becoming less armoured towards the tail. The skull was a fused block of bone. There were heavy brows to protect the eyes, but some relatives had bone discs that would have turned the eyelids into armoured shutters. Even the areas not protected by thick bone and osteoderm lumps were covered with thick scaly skin, lined with little pieces of bone called ossicles. This is the same kind of protection crocodiles use. That was defence. What about offence? The last 7 tail vertebrae were fused together, forming what is called the handle, and it was tipped with 4 overgrown osteoderms, so big they covered the tip of the tail. The tail was heavily muscled, flexible near the body, and fused towards the tip, able to transmit a lot of force. The biomechanics of the tail all align with the name given to ankylosaur tail osteoderms. The club. The only Ankylosaurus club found was 49 centimeters wide, suggesting that those of a fully grown animal would have been even bigger. Only about 8 ankylosaur clubs have been found, but they come in a range of forms. Ankylosaurus was similar to most Euoplocephalus, rather circular, but Anadontosauruses were pointed and Diplosauruses were elongated. The latter also shows signs of impact damage. Although not very flexible up or down, Ankylosaurus's tail could swing in a 100-degree angle side to side. Ken Carpenter has his fingers in a lot of dinosaur pies, but is regarded an authority when it comes to Ankylosaurus.
I like ankylosaurs because they're so different among dinosaurs. They have very squat, low bodies. In one sense, they're almost built like me, so I can kind of relate to them.
He worked with engineers to create an artificial ankylosaur tail, capable of delivering 2.5 tons of impact force, based on Ken's calculations.
Wow, look at that! Just shattered those ribs. Oh man, I'd sure hate to be hit by that thing.
So why a club? Well, we have seen how effective the earlier thyreophorans, the stegosaurs, were with tail weapons, but spikes are a double-edged sword, metaphorically. As seen in one Allosaurus, a spike can get stuck in a predator and break off, injuring the defender. Not so a club. So strong is the weapon theory that the only slight dissent was from Tony Thulborn in 1993. He proposed that the tail was not flexible enough to protect the whole body, and so would have drawn predators to it by acting as a dummy head before striking. Due to the diverse range of club shapes, this was widely rejected. For example, all these clubs come from Euoplocephalus. Also, while Ankylosaurus's hind legs would provide power to the swing, its strong front legs could have helped in turning, keeping a predator in range of that club. And what was Ankylosaurus defending against? Why did it need such protection? Ankylosaurs lived alongside a variety of dromaeosaurids and troodontids, both turkey-sized predatory dinosaurs armed with sickle-shaped claws. But what would Ankylosaurus's club do to one of these? Broken ribs, ruptured organs. That would be one dead dinosaur. But what if a Maniraptor managed to get past the club and aim for a soft spot not protected by bone or osteoderms? This is a replica dromaeosaurid leg striking crocodile skin, similar to Ankylosaurus skin in between its bony armour. Slight damage to the skin, broken claw. But Ankylosaurus was a big animal. Dromaeosaurids and Troodontids would probably have left it alone. But there was another type of predator, the Tyrannosaurs. These animals were big and had a bone-crushing bite. They were basically a massive jaw on legs. Ankylosaurs used their armour to protect against the massive jaw, and their tail clubs to attack the legs. If an Ankylosaurus tail club struck a Tyrannosaur tibia, it would have shattered. Being bipedal, this would have permanently crippled the creature, a death sentence. Ankylosaurus lived in the Maastrichtian stage of the Cretaceous, about 68 to 66 million years ago, and was among the last of the non-avian dinosaurs. It lived in North America, which at the time was split into Laramidia and Appalachia by the Western Interior Seaway. Interestingly, Nodosaurids were successful in Asia until around the mid-Cretaceous, when apparently migrating Ankylosaurids from North America started to replace them. At the same time, North American Ankylosaurid numbers were in decline, leading to about 30 million years with no North American Ankylosaurids, until it seems the Asian Ankylosaurids began moving back. The areas that Ankylosaurus was found were large floodplains and swampy estuaries. With only one specimen found in each formation, it seems to have been a rare dinosaur. However, it may have lived in larger numbers on higher ground that has not been preserved. In all 5 formations, Hell Creek, Ferris, Lance, Frenchman and Scollard, you get remains of small mammals and reptiles, particularly marine turtles and crocodiles. There have also been found bits of an azadarchid, a large pterosaur similar to the massive Quetzalcoatlus, and bits of a mosasaur. In addition to Ankylosaurus, 3 dinosaurs are always found in each of these areas. The small ornithopod Thescelosaurus, the horned ceratopsian Triceratops, and the largest of the tyrannosaurs, Tyrannosaurus. These 3 dinosaurs were everywhere in North America. There was also the nodosaurid Denversaurus, the large ornithopod Edmontosaurus, the ceratopsians Leptoceratops and Torosaurus, the hard-headed Pachycephalosaurs, Pachycephalosaurus and Spherothilus, and the speedy Ornithomimus. Most places also had small Troodontids like Troodon, or Dromaeosaurids like Saurornitholestes. There were also a lot of early birds. Enantiornithines like Avisaurus had teeth and claws in addition to wings. Hesperornithines like Potomornis were flightless divers. Both groups went the way of the non-avian dinosaurs 66 million years ago. Ankylosaurus was not fast, not bright, but tough. It lived in the same neighbourhood as Tyrannosaurus rex, but that predator feared a tussle with an Ankylosaurus. Thank you for watching. If you like this video, show your opinion with a thumbs up and share it with others. Maybe subscribe if you'd like to see more videos like this. Why not post a comment on what dinosaur you'd like me to do a profile on next? Also, I know this has taken a while, but think about clicking the bell if you want to know when I upload a new video. By the way, these are dinosaur profiles. No pterosaurs or marine reptiles need apply. Note, I will not be doing Tyrannosaurus rex in my next profile. I will be doing it eventually, I just want more experience so I can do it justice. If you want to further support this channel, I have a book available on iBooks. It's interactive, has original illustrations, and has a number of interesting dinosaurs in it, including Ankylosaurus. Link in the description. Not many dinosaurs spark a scientific revolution, but this one did. Ushering in the dinosaur renaissance, a dinosaur profile on Deinonychus. Hope to see you then.